Coming up on Lyssa and
They're
Lyssa.
not going to typically go for the jugular like that. They might say things that hurt your feelings, like,
I just want to be alone. Why are you always bothering me?
they might criticize you in ways, but they're not gonna criticize you down to your core trauma. They're not gonna use things like that just hit you below the belt, that make you go,
oh my gosh, who are you?
they're not gonna use those types of things. The only types of people that will ever do that, that is a for sure character disturbance. I'm telling you, there's no one that just does that is just like, oh, that's just a bad habit. That is a character disturbance to the maximum.
Hey, listen!
Moving right along to letter I. Next letter on the criteria list is letter I, and that stands for interpersonal exploitation of others for personal gain or self-gain. These are some just large words that basically make up the big part of the narcissist's emotionally abusive behavior. So this one right here, this is where a lot of the emotional abuse resides. This is basically taking someone's vulnerabilities, or making them vulnerable in some way. So you're either well, they actually do both. They're going to pick up on that person's places that they're weak and vulnerable, and then they will specifically seek out ways to dominate them and overpower them and control them by using those vulnerabilities. And that is the essence of exploitation. It's taking where someone has openings that are easy to wound, basically. You figure out where someone's soft spots are, all their weak areas, so that you can just dig in right there and take them down more easily and more strategically and more deeply. So this is why this part right here, exploitation and these types of tactics, they are, while not always fully cognizant or conscious in the conscious mind, it doesn't matter because it's very obvious that it is hurtful. And this is the part, I'm not sure if this is just this way for me due to my attachment style and my personality traits and my particular traumas, or if it's this way for a lot of people, but I would say it's probably a good portion of people. This is one of the most hurtful and painful parts of emotional abuse, and this is particularly why narcissistic abuse is so traumatizing and painful and lasts so long. And this is what makes emotional abuse long-lasting as well, in my opinion. For me, this is what did it. It's discovering that someone took the things that were vulnerable about you and used them against you and used them to hurt you and used them to take you down. Used those things, the things that you offered up to them from your heart and from a private, vulnerable, and intimate place of you. They used those things to harm you and make your life hell for many years to follow, even after you leave them. And it sucks. It's the worst. So let me give you some examples of what this is. They could exploit you by manipulating you, guilt tripping. This is all your standard emotional abuse tactics. So guilt tripping, gaslighting, emotional blackmail, or emotional withholding when you don't do what they want, punishing behaviors, all of those things. Those are all manipulative tactics, and they are exploiting, usually, the more anxiously attached partner's need for closeness and need for bond. It basically looks like withholding everything that your partner needs. So you're making sure not to give your partner what they need. That's what the narcissist is doing usually. And also making them feel like it's their fault, and that if they would just do these things, or if they were just smarter, if they just would rely on them more, listen to them more, then if they were as smart as them, things like that. If they could do anything right. The whole MO is make you feel as small as possible. That then elevates them and their self-esteem and their power and their weird, complex. You'll do whatever they say. Additionally, you won't ever think to leave them. You won't be able to leave them because you'll be so knocked down. How are you even going to survive? If they do this one, they could do this across the board. They could do this to family members. They could do this to friends. You could do it in the workplace. But financial exploitation might look like taking advantage of your sick grandmother or something that you know has money, and you take advantage while she's down. Narcissists can do these things, and there's so many different ways they can do them. And sometimes it might seem like the opposite way around of a certain type of exploitation or type of manipulation is not the same thing, but it is. It's just flipped around. So, for example, if you think of financial exploitation that a narcissist might do, you might think about how they're going to financially take from you, right? You might think it's going to be in the form of them taking your money or trying to hoard all the money away from you, or taking your money and making you pay for everything. But it can be done in really backwards ways. Like, for example, maybe they are paying for everything. Maybe they have all the money. They tell you not to pay for something, but then when other people are around, suddenly out of nowhere, they start this weird guilt trip thing on you and talk about how you don't pay for something when they set it up to be that way. And they're telling the story incorrectly now to make you look bad. Or they might gaslight you and make you think you're not doing your part in the relationship, but you've paid for just different things. Like, they might pay for this certain bill of the home, and you might pay for these other bills, but they will make it seem like they pay for everything and try to make you think that you've done nothing and that all your contributions have been nothing. But you can tell when you look at the math that it obviously isn't that way. But they will have you so confused and say this so many times to you that your brain will start to wonder, and it can get really confusing. For example, in my relationship, I purchased approximately, almost to the dollar actually, $8,000 worth of furniture and decorations to make the house a home. I furnished multiple rooms all by myself. And I spent $500 to $600 a month on groceries and cooked meals routinely, which he shared in. For the entire first year, without any assistance, I purchased pretty much all of the home cleaning supplies, as well as home supplies for shared areas. I also, for the entire time I lived there, did nearly 100% of the cleaning of the shared areas of the house. And he didn't pay any of my bills. I paid more rent than he paid. He had a substantially lower rent payment than I did. And I also paid my even share of the other household bills equally. He did assist me when I went through my financial troubles later on in our time living there. When I had something happen to me that was no fault of my own, he helped me of his own free will that he offered to do. And then that wasn't money that I just kept. That was money I was going to pay him back, and then I proceeded to do so. So he then told the story as though he was paying my bills, he was paying for everything, and like I didn't contribute to anything. And the way he would do this is he would just downplay anything that I actually paid for. So since I paid for all the furniture, $8,000 worth, which was huge for me because I didn't have a lot of money like that, he just downplayed all of that stuff. He said, oh, I didn't care. We didn't need that. He would have been fine with the rooms being empty and the house echoing and nothing being in our house for ages, for probably the whole time. He wouldn't have needed it because he spent all his time in one area. He would claim that I never cooked. I cooked routinely. I cooked constantly. He never cooked. I cooked all the time. He had a meal very routinely. At first, it was probably 4 and 5 times a week. Once he started talking badly about me and making jokes about me and saying I don't cook over and over and over and over, I dialed it back a bit, but I made so many meals for this man, and everyone witnessed this. So he would just downplay everything that I did so that he could minimize anything that I put money into, so that he could claim that he paid for everything. He did so much. He does everything, and I don't do anything. That's the way that they would do this. It might sound stupid to someone that's never been in it, but gaslighting is a mind F and a half. I want to tell you a story, and maybe this will help people to relate if they haven't been in the situation and they're going like,
Gaslighting sounds so stupid. If someone tells me something that I know isn't true, then I'll just tell them it's not true and move the hell on. Like, what does it matter? I don't get it. If it's not true, it's not true.
But I...
So one time when I was in maybe my late 20s, just maybe 30, barely. And I remember I went to the store with my older son, and he was, I think, 14 at the time-ish. He's pretty tall, so he's taller than me. Especially, even at that point, he was probably getting very close to 6 feet tall. And I'm not super tall. I'm probably a little under 5'4". So he's quite a bit taller than me. And I obviously had him when I was very young. So we go into the store, and I'm buying wine, right? I'm buying, a nice Merlot to relax for my evening, okay? I've had a hard day at work. I go to the counter, And I show my ID because they ask for it. And then she goes,
I need to see everyone's ID for everyone who's buying this wine.
and I was like,
Okay. Oh, he's only 14. He's my son.
this woman, she looked up from her glasses like this. Like glasses on nose. And she's like, I kid you not. This is what she said.
He's not your son.
And I'm just staring at her. I'm like,
He is.
because I'm just like,
This is silly. Yes, he is.
I'm not panicking or anything. And she's just like,
No.
like, oh, what is going on? I was like,
I promise.
at this point, I still didn't think it was very serious. Surely she's going to sell me this wine. We're going to laugh it off like any other time I've had this rhetoric with other people. I thought she was joking, and maybe she just didn't have the jovial tone. Maybe, you know, she's one of those dry, sarcastic humor people. In nervousness, I laugh a little bit. I'm chuckling. I'm giggling. I'm just like,
No, he is. I had him when I was young. He's my son.
and then I wait there to finish paying, and she's just standing there, and she's holding it, and she goes,
I'm sorry, I'm going to need both of your IDs. I can't sell you this wine. That's the policy. You can't buy this wine with this person. If he doesn't have his ID, I can't sell you this wine.
I said,
Yeah, he's not buying the wine. I am. I'm his mother. I buy wine when he's around all the time. You have my ID. I am well over the age of that I need to be. And this is my son. And he doesn't have an ID because he's not 16 yet. He doesn't have a driver's license. He doesn't have an ID. What is the problem?
she just keeps standing there. She just kept repeating it.
I'm sorry. We could get...
And she starts quoting me about the policy about how they could get their liquor license taken away if they sell to a minor. And I said,
Ma'am. I understand that. This is my child. Also, what about this child right here? Do you think screams a nice Merlot? You know, is that what he's giving? I don't think he's gonna drink a Merlot, okay? This is from me. I'm his mother. I assure you, I am his mom. Like, what do you need to see? Okay, this is my child. I don't understand why you can't sell me the wine.
and she just kept saying, that's not your son. That's not your son. And you can't buy this. And I swear, this story always sticks with me because a very odd thing happened that moment. And I took note of it because it helped me to understand the way this works. And it's that if someone repeats something enough times to you, because this is how our subconscious mind is wired and how we get our thoughts, how we get our beliefs. One way is emotion, and the other way is repetition. Anything that is repeated to you enough times, if someone says something to you over and over and over and over again, your brain starts to go, that might be something worth listening to. Maybe, hold on. Let's consider that might be true. Let's consider that information that we just keep hearing and hearing and hearing and hearing. That's why in interrogations, where people are led to falsely confess, they keep them in there so long and they just keep going over the same selling point over and over again. And their tactics are questionable because they can tell you lies in an interrogation. They can tell you that they have information on you that they do not have. They can. They are able by law to do that. So if they tell you that you were there,
We have eyewitness testimony.
or
We have you on camera. We saw you. You were there. We saw your car.
they can tell you this. And if they tell you something that many times over and over and over again while you're stuck in a room and under intense stress, you're going to be upset. You're going to be beside yourself. That's an emotion. And then that repetition is happening. And that is why people so often, it's a phenomenon. Okay. There's so many things. This happens a lot. People falsely confess to heinous crimes and then go to prison and did not do it. They did not have anything to do with the crime. They're completely innocent, but they confessed. They said they did it. And that is why gaslighting is so diabolical. And I really like to stress the fact that I feel like a lot of people really minimize the influence of romantic relationships in your life. A lot of people will say, if someone's doing these things to you, just break up with them. It's not a big deal. Just move on with your life. La-ti-da. Get over it. Like, it's not that serious. It's not that deep. No, it absolutely is. And we just have to start acknowledging how our emotions work and how our mental health operates. And when someone has a significant influence in your life and on your mental health, which anyone that you're in a romantic relationship with, if you're going to levels as far as living with them, integrating into their family, thinking about marriage, Having children, sharing your life with this person, they become an intricate part of your daily life, your core being, your mental health. They become so interwoven within you that they are a part of you. And when someone that has that type of access to all of your soft spots and all of your vulnerabilities and all of the things that can hurt you, and then they specifically try to do that, whether conscious, subconscious, whatever it is, if they do harmful things that tear down your self-worth, that is a big deal. It can cost people their lives, and it needs to be taken seriously. So gaslighting is very, very detrimental. And why it's definitely emotional abuse, because if you can continue to tell someone something over and over and over again that you know is not true, that is a skewed version of the story with the intention to make them think that way instead of the truth, that is harmful, because they're likely to eventually start to believe it. That's why belittling someone and constantly criticizing them is so harmful, because they're prone to eventually probably believe it. She says,
I'm going to have to go get my supervisor. I just don't feel right doing this. I don't think I should sell this to you.
and I just remember standing there thinking, am I doing something wrong? No, I am old enough to buy this wine. I'm not doing anything wrong. Am I doing something wrong? Am I breaking the law right now? Wait. Because I'm getting nervous at this point, because she's so insistent that this is not my son and I should not be buying this wine.
Am I lying to this woman? Is this my son? Is this my son?
For a moment, my brain wanted to question me. It was like unsure. And I realized quickly, no, I'm literally just trying to buy wine. There's nothing wrong here. I have nothing to be ashamed of. Go get your manager. And her supervisor did come, and her supervisor took a look at the situation. I was like, obviously very genuine. I wasn't lying. And finally, they sold me the dang wine. But it was like, oh my gosh. I never forgot that feeling. Just simply saying over and over something that was so obviously, I know it's not true. I definitely did that. And I was just like, wow. So if this hasn't been done to you, it's hard to imagine. But if you've ever had that happen to you with anything else, that's right there. That's gaslighting. They don't know they're gaslighting you. So it's not like malicious and harmful and intentional the way it could be in relationships, but that is gaslighting, and that is exactly how it feels. And just imagine it being done over months, years, on and on. Imagine. It can be devastating. It can be very detrimental to your health. So people who are gaslit a lot and emotionally abused like this are manipulated and confused, and they get to a point where they don't trust anything that they're doing. They become very quiet, withdrawn, very unsure, and they're always timid. They can't make confident decisions for themselves. They doubt every move they make, because they're like, oh, I don't even know what's wrong, what's right, what's real, what's fake. I don't know what's even going on anymore. They go nearly insane. It's not something to take lightly, and it's very real. I promise you. I used to think, like, how could that be? It doesn't even sound like a real thing. It is. It very much is. If you get into a financial bind with a narcissist, they're going to take that low moment and they are going to exploit it. So they're going to make you feel terrible for every single little thing that you can't pay for. Even if they have well enough money to cover it, they are going to guilt trip you for the stress that it's putting on you, even if it's not even costing them anything. Or even if it's costing them a small amount, or you're paying them back, you've been paying them back, they're still going to make you feel like you're just inconveniencing. Every step of that is going to be miserable for you, because they are going to make it as miserable as possible the entire time. They're going to take your low moment and they're going to exploit it, make it the worst it could possibly be. And that is a good key indicator. If you're in a relationship where someone takes your low moments and makes them harder for you, that's not your friend. And that is not someone you should be in a relationship with. So the narcissist cuts at core levels. They hurt you bad, like deeply. And that's why this is so harmful. Emotional exploitation can happen where they take the things that hurt you the most. So if you share with them things that have happened to you, like your past traumas. So if you have any trauma from your childhood, any sensitive subjects for you, anything that triggers you, they might take ways that you were mistreated in your previous relationships, where they may in the beginning have said something like,
I'll never treat you like that. Oh, you don't ever have to feel that way again. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
They might have seemed so loving and understanding, but then lo and behold, they will later on just do very much sometimes those same things, or just betray you in different ways, or constantly, whenever you're upset at them for the very real horrible things they're doing to you, they'll throw that in your face and
Be like, well, I guess you might want to just go back to your cheating ex then. I guess he was better then since I'm so terrible.
so they'll just throw it at you. They'll just hurl it at you in such unfair moments that it has nothing to do with that. So they will just make sure to keep a bank of all these things that you've told them in your intimate, private, vulnerable moments. And then that's what they're going to bring out every time you try to hold them accountable for anything. And even sometimes when you're not trying to hold them accountable, they'll just do it at any normal day too. They're just, any chance they get, they'll bring it up. And the more you react to it, the more they know it's one of those like really painful ones for you, that's the one they're going to reach for even more. They're going to reach for that often. They're going to do it all the time. That is a major narcissistic behavior. They might isolate you. They might tell you lies to make you think that other people are talking about you, other people don't like you. They might paint themselves as like the go-between, the person that's like sticking up for you, and try to paint this picture of everyone hates you, make you feel really insecure about yourself, but like, they're the only one that sticks up for you. I don't know why they do it, because you don't even appreciate them. And the goal here is just, again, another stroke of that ego of theirs, so that they can get you to be like feeling like you're so lucky to be with them, and that like they're the only person that would ever tolerate you, because look, everyone else is just like hates you, and for good reason. And you should just be very thankful that someone of their caliber even would tolerate being with you, even would stand up for you or be with you after everyone else hates you. And they even stick up for you sometimes. So you should really be a lot more appreciative and watch what you're saying to them, because you're out of line. It's actually you're out of line. It's not funny when it happens at all. It's not funny. It's like a night freaking mirror. It's the worst. It's like unbelievable, actually. It doesn't feel like real life when it's happening. They do this to people that are already insecure in these areas. So especially the way I experienced it, I had a wound of feeling like I didn't fit in sometimes, never feeling like I was accepted, or I was always trying to get that. I was terribly a people pleaser most of my life and didn't even realize it, but I was always constantly worried about if people liked me, if they would accept me. I had really grown out of this by the time I was in my relationship, but he brought me right back down with that. That was one of my really like soft spots. So much of it. After a while, I became very uncomfortable in my own home. I felt like no one was on my side. I felt like I couldn't talk to any of my roommates. I felt like no one believed anything I had to say or could see what was going on, apparently. And I just felt like no one was my true friend or an advocate for me or someone that I could trust. And yeah, he did a great job of making it that way. And that definitely fully isolated me. So isolating is a form of interpersonal exploitation for sure. Now, a dismissive avoidant, some of their coping mechanisms can definitely look like this. So oftentimes when a dismissive avoidant has difficulty expressing their emotions, obviously, especially when they get dysregulated or they feel like too much emotion, or they get a heavy emotion and they don't want to feel it. They're going to pull away, and because they don't know how to express themselves. They have this fear of intimacy. They have this fear of dependence. So when big emotions rise up and they feel that pull to be vulnerable with their partner, they're going to be like,
no.
And they're going to push it away. So sometimes this can look like, to their anxious partner, this can look like emotional withholding. This can look like exploitation, like you're trying to pull yourself away from me on purpose. You're distancing. Why are you doing that? You're in a relationship with me. Why won't you open up? It can sometimes be confused for this. It can look like it is specifically manipulation to try to keep control. And the thing is, the difference here is that the narcissist is doing this to exploit their partner and to gain control. They want control themselves of the situation, of the whole thing, of their partner. They want to actually have control of their partner. They want to be able to control what their partner does, how their partner feels, and they want that to be a low. They want their partner to feel very low. A DA, that is absolutely not their MO. They do want control, however. They are doing this for a sense of control, but more of a protection, of a control of self, to maintain independence, to not get themselves hurt. They are afraid of intimacy in the relationship. They are not trying to make their partner feel low or exert power over them. They are simply trying to get away from those emotions that they're afraid of. But in the grand scheme of things, in the relationship for the partner that's going through this, the result is much the same. So it's hard to tell. And with a narcissist, the needle will not move. So you could do anything. You can learn that this might be avoidance. And what do avoidants need? They need space, or they need you to keep your emotions a little more in check so that you can have a calm conversation, make them feel comfortable, give them time, let them know that a conversation is coming up, let them know that the conversation won't take as long and it'll be okay. And like, you're on their team. Those types of helpful strategies, if you're dealing with a dismissive avoidant, they really do love you and they don't have any type of narcissism going on. It's just strictly dismissive avoidance. It's likely that those strategies will get some momentum. They will respond to that well. You'll get somewhere. Not always. There's absolutely the case where it doesn't because they're just too far into their dismissive avoidance and they're not ready. So that could be the case, but for the most part, you'll see a little bit of a willingness to work. You'll see that they want to. They want to, but it's just really difficult for them. And it won't be usually with the dismissive avoidant that is not displaying any narcissism at the same time, is not going to be hurtful about doing this. They're not going to typically go for the jugular like that. They might say things that hurt your feelings, like, I just want to be alone. Why are you always bothering me? They might criticize you in ways, but they're not gonna criticize you down to your core trauma. They're not gonna use things like that just hit you below the belt, that make you go,
Oh my gosh, who are you?
They're not going to use those types of things. The only types of people that will ever do that is a for sure character disturbance. I'm telling you, there is no one that just does that is just like, oh, that's just a bad habit. That is a character disturbance to the maximum. I'm not talking about you're with somebody for years and years and years, and this person's never done that to you before, and this person's usually very well-mannered, but this person just got pushed to their maximum, and in their hurt feelings at the very end, they went off the deep end and they said some really horrible things to you. I'm not talking about that, okay? I am not talking about that. That can happen to the best of us, all right? I am talking about someone who strategically does this often. They do it all the time. It's one of their main weapons. They do it all the time. That is absolutely a character disturbance. Can I say that they are a narcissist? I can't. But I will say it's absolutely a character disturbance, and it's not just a characteristic. It's not at all a characteristic of any type of attachment. It's a character disturbance, for sure. People don't just do that and oopsies. No, that's terrible. That is terrible, terrible, deplorable behavior. I actually feel so strongly about this one and dedicated to never accepting this behavior from anyone ever again, because it was done so frequently and so just viciously to me in my last relationship that I never want to be around someone ever again that would ever do that. That I absolutely vow that in my next relationship, this will be made very clear at the beginning, very early on, that if they ever think to do something like that or say something like that, that is a one and done, and we will never speak again. So I will never tolerate this behavior again, and you should not either. The DA also, like I said, they always want to seek independence and self-reliance. So they want to just be a party of one. They have everything that they need in their own little ecosystem. They can provide all of their own needs. They're just the one-man show. Hyper-independent. So sometimes this can also look like emotional withdrawal or withholding intimacy or stonewalling. And now, I will say this. Dismissive avoidance and all avoidance really have the behavior sometimes of stonewalling and of the silent treatment. But it's not to be manipulative, most often. If it's in efforts to be manipulative, typically, that's going to be a sinister behavior. That's going to be a character disturbance. And obviously, all people have an attachment style, right? So narcissists also have an attachment style. Okay, so they are going to be one of these 4 attachment styles. And likely not secure. They're absolutely not going to be a secure attachment style. I can guarantee you. If it's a narcissist with NPD, they are not going to have a secure attachment style. But it's less likely out of all the three options that they would have a dismissive avoidant. It's the least likely. And go ahead and I want you to put in the comments if you know the most common attachment style for a narcissist. Put it in the comments if you know the answer, okay? Also, share in the comments for me. I want you to tell me, have you had any of these exploiting behaviors done to you? Have you ever experienced this in a relationship? Have you ever been in a relationship with someone who seemed like they had a lot of these behaviors that we're talking about narcissists? If you do, please share that in the comments. Let me know about your experience with exploitation of any kind, or even any of the other criteria that we've gone over. So how can you tell the difference between interpersonal exploitation of a narcissist and just good old dedication to independence? Well, the narcissist is going to carry a negative energy with it. It's going to likely feel very exploitative. I would say the best judge in this one is how cruel their implications and their passive aggressiveness or their stonewalling or their tactics seem to be. If they're stonewalling you, are they just completely flat out not talking to you and they seem smug about it? And they're just like,
You're gonna do what I say. You never listen. Now you're gonna learn your lesson.
They might not say these words, but is that the energy you get off of it when they do this? Or does it seem more like just protection, like they just shut down, like they didn't know what else to do? A dismissive avoidant isn't going to often become harmful with their words or make these little silly like mind games where they say something and you're just like, it'll be more likely for the dismissive avoidant to make excuses for not being able to get together and talk, or be really busy so that they can kind of distance themselves away from this emotional conversation. That's more how they would stonewall. Whereas a narcissist would likely use silent treatment and blatantly just not responding to you when you're talking, or, just like deliberately do something that hurts your feelings. And they'll be very smug about it. A dismissive avoidant's not going to be smug. They don't care. They're not trying to affect you. They're just trying to get away from the emotions. That's all. And I don't know how better to say it. I think that pretty much covers it. But I feel like you know what I mean. You can tell. And here's the thing: is I thought I couldn't tell. I was baffled about this. I was racking my brain trying to figure out,
How do I know if it's like this or that or this or that?
The thing is, like, I did know and I could know. And if I look back now with everything I've learned, obviously, it was not just his attachment style. It was not. Most brazen case I think I could ever have seen in my, it was crazy. For this example, you will know. I want to preface this by saying this is why it gets so difficult. This is why this is an actual problem. It's because there may be cases where you really can't tell. You really can't know for sure. Because on both ends, narcissists and dismissive avoidance, they could exhibit these behaviors and they might not always follow these rules. So there will be cases where this doesn't apply and where you can't tell. And in that case, you just have to trust your judgment. You just have to go with your gut, go with your intuition, and consider how this relationship is making you feel overall and how salvageable it is and what effect it's having on you. But some ways that you can try to distinguish this between a narcissist and dismissive avoidant is check out the intentions and the patterns. So you want to pay attention to what the intention is and the pattern of behavior. Can we always know what someone's intention is? No, but we can look at their patterns of behavior and get a general idea. So dismissive avoidants are avoiding and pushing away and then using emotional distancing because of their fear of vulnerability, their fear of intimacy. Whereas a narcissist is doing it to exploit others for their own gain, and they're disregarding the way that harms the other person. Okay, so in the pattern of behavior, do you see the outcome being that the narcissist is gaining something? That your partner, if they are the narcissist, is gaining some type of control or whatever it is that they're trying to gain. Are they just willing to do anything? Just step all over you? Check out the patterns of their behavior. Another thing you can look at is empathy and accountability. The dismissive avoidant, here's where it still gets sticky. Dismissive avoidant may struggle to take accountability for their actions. They may struggle to exhibit empathy. They will feel empathy. This is the thing about the dismissive avoidant is they are going to feel all these things internally. They may want to express them. They do not know how, and they are afraid to do so. So their outward stoicism is not because they don't feel those ways. And it's not because they don't care about you. They just don't know how to show that. They don't know how to do it. And they're also afraid to do it. The narcissist sees no value in doing that. They don't think you deserve that. And they're better than you. So they don't want to give that to you because you don't deserve it, and they don't see a need for it. So telling the difference between those two, though, again, kind of difficult. Generally, not always, dismissive avoidants are able to look back and self-reflect to some extent. So you'll see a bit of a budge. Whereas narcissists, they will almost never exhibit genuine apologies, genuine empathy. They won't care a lot about how you feel. They will not try to relate to you. You will beat a point that is so simple into the ground for years and see them never budge. That is not just a dismissive avoidant. That is not just any one of the attachment styles at all. That is a problem, a character disturbance, and a major red flag. If it's been years and this person has not one time tried to level with you and tried to really listen to you and understand what you're trying to tell them, and you've been giving them this same problem over and over and over for years, and they have the exact same outlook that they had on day one, and they have not even tried to hear you. They have repeated things that you have given every bit of evidence should have knocked that out of the water and at least made them consider it. They've never once tried to level with you and see it from your perspective, never once showed any sign of trying to do that. That's not just an attachment style problem. Nope, it's a great indication that you might be dealing with narcissism or some kind of character disturbance, okay? Reciprocity in the relationship. Be careful with this one, because a narcissist will want you to believe that you don't reciprocate anything. They do everything. You do nothing. You're worthless. You don't know how to give anything. You don't have anything to offer them. Whereas a dismissive avoidant, they're not going to ignore all of your input. They're not going to tell you that you don't do anything if you do reciprocate. They might downplay some of the stuff you do and feel uncomfortable with it. Again, this can look very similar. I'm going to say that every time because it's like, that's exactly why this is hard. Because they might not be comfortable acknowledging the things that you're doing for them because they're not comfortable with letting someone do something for them. If it's just dismissive avoidant attachment, they might state that you don't do a lot for them. They're going to not really want you to do much for them, but they're not going to continuously guilt trip you about that then. Whereas the narcissist is going to act like they don't need anything from you, but then they're going to continuously tell you how you do nothing for them while you are doing things for them. And they're never going to acknowledge anything that you do. Whereas the dismissive avoidant might be uncomfortable with emotional outpour of gratitude, but they're going to recognize that you do things for them. They're not going to just be completely blind to that and gaslight you into thinking that they don't notice anything that you do. They might lack in that area, but there's going to be at least some level of sanity there, and rather than blatantly telling you something that's preposterous, okay? Not only that they tell you these things, there's going to be a difference in actual reciprocity from them. Dismissive avoidance, they're going to struggle with the emotional intimacy part of giving, but they're typically very capable of reciprocity in other areas. They're going to be very willing to do a lot for you. They're going to show some consideration for your feelings and your needs sometimes. Maybe not great, but they will be trying. You'll see that they want to do that. It just might make them uncomfortable sometimes. When it gets highly emotional, it might get a little uncomfortable at that point. But a narcissist, they aren't going to want to give in any area. They're going to be really inconvenienced and irritable and give you hell every time they are inconvenienced for anything that doesn't just involve them. And you are going to be made to feel like a complete burden for existing. Anything that normal life causes you to have to deal with is going to be quite burdensome to them. And they're going to make sure you know about that. Any little tiny thing that they do, they're going to act like they just saved the world, but you could do that same task every single day and they will act like they've never seen it. They don't care.
What is that? I don't even know what you're talking about.
A narcissist will sit there and let you totally expend yourself emotionally, just drain you. They might drain you, and then they will tell you you did nothing. And then they will take that all in. They will get all of those benefits. And then they will act like they got nothing from you.
That wasn't anything. I never got anything from you. What are you talking about?
You can have pages of receipts and show them.
This is hello, I bought all this. I buy all this. I do this for you.
You can tell them 1,000 times and they'll be like,
What did you ever do for me? I only did things for you. What did you ever do for me?
if someone in a relationship with you, after being with you for a long time, and you know damn well you did a lot for them, anybody who's in a relationship with you for years, they're probably in that relationship with you because they're getting something out of it. You couldn't have done nothing. So if someone continuously tells you,
what did you do for me? What do you ever do? What did you ever give to me?
and even after you tell them very specific, obvious lists and lists of things that you did because you're like, I guess, playing, and you feed into the behavior for a while. I freaking did. I made documents. I collected bank statements and receipts. I went mad. I went absolutely mad in that relationship trying to show this person. And even after all of that, when they would literally they would divert their eyes. They would refuse to look at it. And then they would just continue to say that same stupid statement.
What did you ever do for me?
That is I can't think of anything that clearly displays exactly what that is. Because that is ridiculous to say. Absolutely ridiculous. And that was said to me so many times and is still said to this day. So, well, I don't talk to that person anymore. The last time I did, still says it to this day. That's not part of their attachment style. That is something much more. And I can't say if that person is or isn't, you know what. But they certainly had the behaviors. They certainly had many of the behaviors. Almost all of them, actually. It doesn't matter. But just so you know, that is not anyone's attachment style that makes them say something so preposterous. It's just dumb. I hope that if something like that should ever happen to you, that you will have watched some of my episodes and you will have heard about how I tried to resolve that by the logical way, by showing them very plainly that I did do a lot for them, and that you will just instead roll your eyes, laugh, and get the hell away from them the first time, so you don't have to hear it 20,000 times and make 17 documents that prove the same thing when they didn't read even one of them. And then they continued to say it, okay? Please don't do that. That is my gift to you. And so, and it's okay. Some people might see this and be like,
God, no, dummy. I know, I won't do that. I would never do that.
but like, okay, fine, good for you. I'm glad. But anybody else, whoever feels compelled to do that, no one's going to tell you. If you know that you do things for them, don't question yourself. It's gaslighting, okay? Just believe in yourself and believe in what you've done. And know for sure that it doesn't matter what they say, because that doesn't mean they can't remove the past and change history and make it so. You did do those things for them. So they are the ones that are missing something, okay? Not you. Another way is manipulative tactics, obviously. Again, how do we know if it's manipulation or just emotional distancing? Sometimes we don't. Narcissists are more likely to engage in the gaslighting. They're more likely to engage in the guilt tripping. And they are more likely to have that very polarized difference between the beginning of the relationship and then a little ways in when you got attached to then what happened in the rest of the relationship. And you will have seen the switch. You will have noticed a huge difference in them. And then it wasn't just for a little bit. Like they got a little nervous and scared and they pulled away. No. And they won't leave the relationship. They will stay in it. And then they will still want to be with you. They will still continue the relationship, but they will never treat you well like they did in the beginning ever again. You will never see that person again. Unless they're winning you back and they lost you or something and they're doing the hoovering. But no. You'll see little glimpses of kindness or the love that they have for you once in a while. But that's just breadcrumbing. You'll never see it like you saw it in the beginning again. Whereas a dismissive avoidant, and most avoidants, are going to go through maybe a little bit of a pullback stage when they start to get a little scared. Like they are like, oh, this is getting real. They might withdraw. That's natural. That's very common. It's a common theme in relationships. It's like 3 months in or something, like all of a sudden they're being a lot more distant. They're not responding as much. That's just usually either an adjustment back down to reality from this excitement you were having from just meeting each other, or it's the avoidant. They're becoming a little bit dysregulated because of the seriousness and the more vulnerability that is being required of them to remain in that relationship. They might pull back a little bit. But they're not going to be cruel to you. They're not going to try to make you think that you're the problem. They're not going to like make it you think that something is wrong with you or you did something wrong to them. They're not going to want you to think that. They're just going to probably say things like,
I just have a lot going on at work.
and they're likely going to, as long as you don't then pour it on thick and cling to them and do a lot of anxious things to keep them more and more and more dysregulated, which does happen. But as long as you don't do that and you let them get that over with, set your own boundaries and be like,
I understand, take your time, but hopefully we can get on the same level about this.
and you guys come to a middle ground with that, you'll see them come back towards you and put more into you again. The narcissist, no, it's not going to come back. They're going to mistreat you from that point on with very, very small, very teensy little bits of times where you're like,
Oh, there you are. Oh, he's being nice tonight.
not for me, it was not more than one evening at a time was all I would ever get sometimes. It was never, I don't think, maybe like a couple of times it was like 2 days or something like that, but almost never. It was like a short period of time, and then by the morning, no, he was in true form again. The last way you can tell is the impact on mental health. While again, there's always exceptions to this, a dismissive avoidance impact, it can make their partner feel very lonely. They might have some insecurity. They might feel like maybe they're not what that partner, what the person needs or wants or good enough for them. But it's unlikely to result in pervasive feelings of worthlessness that go on and on and on and that get worse and worse. Being with a dismissive avoidant, that's not likely the case. So if you are with a dismissive avoidant and that's the case, and these types of behaviors are happening, and then you are feeling that pervasive feeling of worthlessness and constant emotional turmoil, and it's almost, you might get so mentally ill that you feel like you can't go on, you're losing touch with self, you're losing touch with reality, or you're losing touch with your health, and always you're down bad. That's likely more than dismissive avoidance. There's always a chance it could be maybe, self-reflection. Maybe it's your attachment style. Just a thought. It can happen. It could be your anxious attachment style that is overreacting, and just you need to do some healing. And maybe likely so either way. But just regular old plain old dismissive avoidance, it's not likely to inflict that much pervasive harm to your mental health. That just lasts and lasts and lasts. It can make you feel alone at times when they are pulling away, but it's not going to be the dark cloud of hopelessness over your life where you're just like,
Someone is just mistreating me constantly and I can't call it out. They're not being honest about it. It's just crazy.
that doesn't tend to be the outcome of a dismissive avoidant. Also, while emotional abuse, like stonewalling and things like that, they are indirectly, they are emotional abuse. But with a narcissist, like we've said, the relationship is going to tend to have repetitive examples of overt, manipulative, and emotional abuse. It's going to happen all the time. And it's going to happen in ways that you have pointed out are emotionally abusive. And it's going to keep happening. And it's going to seem very malicious because it is. And it's going to hurt a lot. And they're going to keep doing it. They're going to just keep doing it. There's going to be a significant toll on your mental health if you are with a narcissist. Whereas you may take a hit to your mental health with a dismissive avoidant if you are deep in your anxious attachment and you guys aren't able to work that out or find any common ground. You could take a hit to your mental health, but it's not going to be this significant most of the time. Like the way that narcissistic abuse is going to deeply harm you. Always like to suggest this with anything. If you're struggling to figure out what it is you are dealing with and how to address it and how to recognize what these things mean And if you are being a good judge of what's going on here, it is best to seek out the help of a professional and go to therapy by yourself and get some more insight on this so that you can have a better idea what you're looking at from someone else's help in the professional field. I wouldn't take your partner with you, especially if they're a narcissist. Don't do that. Don't do that. Next up, letter A. The A in Special Me stands for arrogance. And oh, do they have tons of that. And arrogance is characterized by an exaggerated sense of self-importance and superiority and sometimes entitlement, often. So these are things that are already on the list of the DSM. So like entitlement's already its own characteristic, and self-importance already its own characteristic on here. So arrogance just like right in line with those traits. So the difference from what I understand is arrogance is more about the behavior, whereas self-importance is like an inner belief that you're just better, that you're like entitlement is an inner belief or assumption that you should receive certain things without having to work for them, or more than others should receive them. And then all of those traits are traits that are described when you say arrogant. So that's an arrogant person, displays entitlement, displays superiority, displays self-importance, things like that. But a really key part of arrogance is that it also includes usually belittlement of other people and needing to knock them down a bit to make yourself feel like bigger than them and better than them. Because in a sense, people could have beliefs like self-importance. They could have superiority beliefs, but it doesn't mean that they carry out behaviors that has to tear other people down. Because usually if you actually do believe in yourself and you actually do believe that you're of this high caliber, you don't feel the need to tear others down to feel that way. You actually just feel that way. So arrogance is marked by this need to be haughty and like have to make sure everybody always remembers it. You have to always remind them, and you have to always make sure everyone's smaller than you at all times. Literally, this will be constant in your behavior. I mean, I'm sure there's different levels, but every narcissist I've ever known, it's almost all the time. They're constantly doing this. And a lot of times, their arrogance with other people, when it's not with their partner, it might start out with their partner like this, but with other people, it's usually disguised a lot in jokes. Or if they are tearing their partner down in front of other people, it's disguised as jokes. So that when their partner complains about it, they can just be like,
That's just a joke. But you can't take a joke.
it's a really, really, really common behavior for arrogance and for a narcissist. Okay? So they're going to be riddled with, get it? Riddled over that. Anyways. Another thing about arrogance is that they will not be able to handle very often. Like, they're not going to be interested when other people are talking. And with other people sharing their successes, they're going to feel the need to judge them and kind of like knock them off their high horse a little bit. I am not an arrogant person whatsoever, and I feel 100% confident to say that. That's not my personality type. And it would just be so funny sometimes thinking back, like, my ex would say things to me like,
Oh, just think you're on your high horse. Get off your high horse.
and I would just think like,
What is this projection? Like, what are you talking about? If I'm on any horse, save me. I'm scared.
but if I'm on any horse, it's probably like a little pony, because no. Like, he just had my struggle so backwards, and it was obvious it was projection, because that is the opposite of my life. Like, I kept trying to tell him,
Honey, my struggle in life is to think that I am worth much. I don't go around telling everybody how great I am. I don't do that. I can barely think that myself. So that's not my struggle. I think that's yours. That's for you. I'm not doing that to you. You're doing that to you.
it was just funny. It wasn't funny. It was terrible, but I'm laughing about it now, so I guess that's a good sign. How is this going to sometimes come up for a DA? What a DA will have is a faith and a confidence in their own abilities, and they'll be able to really stand on their own. And the thing that's going to really, really mark the difference here is going to be the narcissist is going to need to keep telling you about this. They need to constantly tell people about this, and they need to constantly hear feedback that verifies this and reaffirms this to them. So they will spend a lot of their time rehashing the same conversations that they've already had with someone else. They'll need to have it again with another person so that that person can then validate them. And then that's not enough. Then they need to have it with another person. They'll have it millions of times with all these different people so that all these different people can give them the same response that they knew they were going to get. And they'll sit there and they'll chuckle and they'll laugh and they'll just like repeat it over and over because they just need to hear it so many times. A DA is not going to do that at all. They love their autonomy. They like, quiet time and me time. They don't need validation from other people. That is a huge difference between a narcissist and a DA. I think it's one of the biggest differences. It's actually why dismissive avoidants are not likely to often be narcissistic as well, because grandiosity and dismissive avoidant, they just don't go together. They don't typically go together. They cannot stand for the spotlight or the attention to be about anything other than them for very much time at all. And it almost infuriates them, especially if you're a target of theirs. Like if you're their partner, they're going to hate anything that has to revolve around you and you getting what you want and you talking about things you like. They hate all of that. You're a big target for them. You're their property. You're theirs to control. You don't get to talk about whatever you want to talk about. You talk about what they like. They actually feel like you're doing something wrong when you do that. And it makes them mad. It's wild. So there will be none of this with the DA, but the marked difference most of the time, the way you're going to be able to tell, is that with the DA, there's not going to be a pattern of belittling. There's not going to be this pattern of this constant need to be just chatting about themselves only, and then completely uninterested when it's about anybody else for more than a short amount of time. They might not have a lot to say or a lot of feedback to give or get real deep into the conversations with you, but they're going to still be proud of you. They're going to still want to see you succeed. They're going to still, want to hear about what you have going on. They just don't want to get emotional about it. So you'll be able to tell that difference. The narcissist is just going to be a jerk. They're going to be rude. They're going to need to make you feel bad about what you're doing. That thing that you love that's bringing you so much happiness and joy, they're going to need to tear it down and cut it down and act like it's nothing. All right, let's keep it going with letter L. The L in Special Me is for lack of empathy. Now, this one's a little bit tricky because both a narcissist and a dismissive avoidant are going to seem like they have a lack of empathy. The difference is that the narcissist can understand empathy usually, and this is made obvious when it's shown that they can display empathy in situations where they are needing to employ it for personal gain. And it's most often shown in relationships during the love bombing stage. So when you first get together with someone that's a narcissist, you will notice that they have a lot of empathy. They seem to be able to relate to you and listen to you and really be there for you and understand your situation and really seem very supportive. And then when you go into the devaluation stage, that's all gone out the window. It's like they can't find a single thing to empathize with you on. They're actually very much more cruel to you in moments where you need empathy. It's almost like they go in the opposite direction completely. Whereas DAs, it's probably going to be pretty consistent. Even in the beginning to the end, it's going to be quite the same. It's not going to be like they showed a lot of empathy in the beginning and then suddenly they can show none. So that'll be a really big indicator. And the difference is that DAs, it's not that they don't feel empathy. It's that they have trouble with emotional expression. They have an emotional detachment. So anytime a situation becomes very emotional or emotions are heightened in that situation, a DA is going to pull away or shut down. So dismissive, avoidant, they're going to want to dismiss those emotions away. That's why they're called that. They don't feel comfortable with emotional intimacy and they don't feel comfortable being vulnerable. So if someone else around them is being vulnerable, they're going to feel uncomfortable with that. They're not going to want to participate in that. It's not that they don't feel bad for you. They're quite stunted in the area of how emotions feel, how someone should react in an emotional situation. They react by pushing it away. So they're going to likely do things to help you to do the same thing. So they're going to want to solve your problem right away. Kind of like logistically solve it, just fix it. They don't want to go into the emotions or let you vent. They just want to fix it up real quick, like surface level. A narcissist is not going to try to fix your problem. They're just going to probably agitate it and make it all about themselves. They'll probably blame it on you. So something that I've experienced in a situation like this with someone who likely had character disturbances would be that they would take that moment that I was having to tell me all the reasons why it's probably my fault. They would make unfair references to other things to make it seem like they go together, as though I'm showing some pattern in this area where it's more likely that it's me and I'm the problem. They'll oftentimes, someone with a character disturbance like narcissism, they'll start to make it about something else that isn't even related, but they'll use it as an opportunity to bring up something that you so-called did to them, or another situation that's not even the same, like just to bring that situation up and kind of deflect from whatever you're talking about. And so the narcissist is going to do this because they feel personally attacked, because they often feel that way. They think everything is a personal attack on them. So you talking about an emotion is going to trigger them, and they will think that you're somehow trying to allude to this other problem that you had about them that they're worried about, because they often do that. They're always talking in like implications, and they're always hinting at something and jabbing at you, so that's often that they're going to think you're doing the same. So they're going to be very sensitive. So anytime you want to bring up a subject that maybe has nothing to do with them, they're not even going to be able to empathize with you, because they're too busy thinking that you're jabbing at them, and then they're going to get all defensive, and then they're going to start jabbing at you. A dismissive avoidant, it's less likely for that to happen. A dismissive avoidant is going to deflect away from your emotional expression because they just don't know how to respond. They just do not know how to connect emotionally or express that. They might feel those feelings for you. They're going to feel bad for you. They're going to feel empathy inside, but their instant reaction to that is going to be, okay, well, like, how can I make this person happy immediately? Or how can I make this go away, solve this really quickly? They might sadly, yeah, I mean, this is really not helpful or kind to do to your partner, but sadly they might try to get away. They might try to say, I gotta go, or find a reason to leave the conversation because they just feel uncomfortable with that level of emotions, even if it's not directed at them. So sometimes they can get accused, and this can get conflated with them having a lack of empathy because of narcissism, whereas they're just having a lack of empathy because they don't know how to express it. It is important to acknowledge at this part that dismissive avoidants are also highly marked by being very sensitive to criticism. So much the same way that the narcissist automatically assumes that you are doing what they're doing all the time, the implications and the jabbing at them and the little slights and little digs, they'll see you doing that when you're not doing that. They'll assume that you're doing it because, like I said, they're always doing that. In a similar way, the dismissive avoidant is known for often getting defensive about things that aren't criticism when you're just bringing up a topic with them and you're just trying to have a conversation with them and you're not criticizing them. They might feel that that is criticism, and they have a very hard time accepting criticism because they are already very hard on themselves internally. So they get very defensive and they're going to pull away, try to get away, and they might even jab at you in times like that. So that type of behavior is obviously never okay. Within a partnership, you want to always call it out right away if someone is jabbing at you or saying rude things towards you on purpose, trying to hurt your feelings. You always want to nip in the bud the four horsemen anytime you see them. Defensiveness, you always want to nip that in the bud. Stonewalling, you always want to nip that in the bud. Any type of contempt, which would be demeaning your partner, talking down to them, you never ever want to put up with that in a relationship, even for a second. So the dismissive avoidant is quite capable of doing this. This may be something that happens with them, and it's going to look nearly identical to the way the narcissist is always feeling offended. Okay? And so how confusing, how do you tell the difference? And it can be tough because, again, you don't know what's going on inside of someone's internal workings. And a narcissist is obviously not going to tell you what is going on inside of their internal workings. And if they try to, they're not going to be honest about it. So that's a no-go. And a dismissive avoidant is not going to be able to tell you about their inner workings because they're often very unfamiliar with them. They keep themselves detached from that part of themselves. That's what they always learned from childhood. The cycle was they felt an emotion. At some time in their childhood, they were probably shamed for that or told that they were weak, or they were modeled by their caregiver that you stay strong, you don't show that, you keep a stern face, you don't cry, stop it, get those emotions out of here, we don't have time for that. They were trained that way from their childhood, or they were ridiculed for it. So they learned, don't show that. So then they just never did. And one way they coped with that was to make themselves believe that they don't even feel it. So almost as quickly, this takes place without them even realizing it. They don't even realize they're doing it. It's so automatic. So almost before they even realize they have an emotion, they've already pushed it away and decided that they do not feel that way, that they're just not going to feel. And then they decide that they never felt that way. They don't have those feelings. How do you tell the difference? The big factor here is going to be the beginning stage of the relationship. They seem to have so much emotion. If they're narcissistic or having a character disturbance, you're going to see that they have so much empathy in the beginning. They get you to open up. They really seem like they want to listen. They even encourage you to open up. They want to hear all about you, everything. And they're empathetic. And then a stark change. So then near the end of the relationship or just past the love bombing stage, they all of a sudden can't seem to stand you to be emotional. They don't have any time for it. They're rude when you're emotional. When you have your lowest times, they're very great at kicking you when you're down. A really good indicator is a dismissive avoidant is less likely to be cruel. They aren't likely to be overtly cruel to you to avoid your emotions, whereas a narcissist, absolutely. They're likely to be their most cruel to you during your hardest times, times when you're most in need. And it's because they do not like the way that you are needing more attention or more support. They feel like that's a burden to them, and they feel like everything always needs to be about them. So they are irritated and burdened by your need. So if you are sick, they're going to be probably more cruel to you. If you lose a loved one, they're probably going to be more cruel to you during that time because they're like, oh.
You just think you need attention.
And they're irritated by the spotlight not being on them for that moment. Even though it could be one of the most difficult things you've ever experienced. You could have lost a very close family member, and they're going to feel like
you're just doing too much. Just get over it. You just want so much attention.
And let them lose somebody. And it's the end of the world. Because it actually kind of is. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much you show to them. They will never reciprocate that. They feel like it should always be about them. So they are going to see your grievance, your grieving time. They're going to see that as neediness and just too much. Just stop. You're being so over the top. Yeah. I know when I went through probably the hardest time I've ever been through, a person that I believed to have a pretty significant character disturbance was very cruel to me, was very cold, was very, just so, it was shocking, actually. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever get over it. It was just the unbelievable level of cruelty with that person was just, it was, yeah, it's something you don't forget. That's not going to be related to specifically their attachment style. That's a red flag in a totally different level, in a totally different way. They could be any attachment style. It doesn't matter. That is not their attachment style if someone is like that. But it can be pretty upsetting if you have a dismissive avoidant partner and they aren't showing you empathy during difficult times. But something that will be there, most likely, if you're with a partner that cares about you, is that they might show it in different ways. They might do a little more for you. On the physical side. If you normally are doing a lot of the housework around the house, or you're normally the person that cooks and you're going through a hard time, you might see that a DA will show you empathy in acts of service. So they might do some of that housework for you. They might pick up the slack in those ways without really showing a lot emotionally towards you. But that is their way of showing you.
I'm sad for you. I feel what you're going through. I notice that you need this.
They're not going to be able to put it so much into words, but you will see it in other areas. And these are never going to be cut and dry rules. It's more of a pattern of behavior. So anybody can do any of these things at any given time on a one-off. Like someone with a character disturbance, they might do something for you nice at a random time, but you want to consider the context clues. If, for example, you're in a spot in your relationship where maybe you were about to leave them or it's getting really bad, narcissists go through, it's called hoovering. And usually this takes place after you've left them and they try to get you back. But even if in a relationship you're about to leave them and they need to buy for more time, they're going to start doing the smear campaign behind your back, and they need time to work up to when they're going to get ready to discard you. They might hoover you a bit within the relationship. They might start acting the way they did in the love bombing stage again. So just because they do this doesn't mean that negates the fact that they might be a narcissist. So just think about patterns what they're like most of the time, and if there's context clues around what they're doing that help you to determine this. Oh God, how am I gonna do M? Letter M. Letter M stands for must be admired. So they're just the attention, you know what's. Narcissist, they eat it up. The term that refers to this is narcissistic supply. So a narcissist always needs their supply. It's like a drug, or like if they're a vampire, it's like the blood of what they need. They need it to survive. They can't stand to be without it. They need it at all times. Narcissists are very commonly cheaters. They commonly have more than one partner at a time, usually unknown to their main partner. So they're cheating, they're lying, they're going behind their back. They often have relationships that overlap. So they'll have their partner for a while. Then when they're getting tired of that person, they've already devalued them a lot. They're not going to get rid of that person yet, because they need to make sure that they ruin that person's reputation first so that they're not blamed for the breakup. They have to make sure that everyone around them still thinks that they're the best person ever. So they have to make their partner into a terrible person. So they're going to be telling lies or skewing stories, making everything seem like this person's unhinged, this person's crazy, this person is doing all these bad things. And then they make that person look bad. And so when then they break up, everyone thinks obviously that it's that person's fault. Oftentimes they do something called triangulation, which is where they will make their partner and a third party have this dynamic of jealousy, or like pit them against each other. For example, for that hit of supply, like that little boost that they get, they might have a coworker that they will come home and talk about all the time. They'll just be singing that person's praises every single day, constantly. That'll be like, say for example, I don't know, Shelby.
Shelby did this, and Shelby's so great, and Shelby, oh my gosh, you won't believe what Shelby did today. She's such a rock star. She's so amazing. Shelby.
But then meanwhile, all they're saying to their partner about their partner is constantly criticism. They'll be putting them down and saying all these terrible things about them, and
you couldn't even get that done. Oh, what are you wearing?
Constantly making rude jabs at them or making jokes at their expense and just being really crappy towards their partner. But then all they have to say about Shelby is just great things. And it'll be, with Shelby, they'll highlight the most minimal things. Like Shelby's just literally being a normal coworker and showing up to work.
Shelby showed up for work today. Like, she's so great. Shelby did her job today. She's so amazing.
But then they'll be criticizing their partner.
Oh, you couldn't do 17 tasks at one time? Oh.
They'll be overlooking all the great things that their partner's doing above and beyond. But they'll be praising this Shelby person for doing the bare minimum. And this is done to triangulate them. So it's so that their partner will naturally become a bit jealous of the way that their partner is paying attention and praising Shelby. So then that'll give them a boost of ego, like they're wanted. And it gives them an excitement. And then, or their partner will fall all over themselves to try to be better than Shelby. So then that gives them a boost too, because they're like,
I'm so loved. I'm so admired. I have all these people loving me and pining over me and wanting me and just fighting over me.
Shelby might be completely unaware that any of this is going on because she's just a pawn in the game. This trait in and of itself will be a huge determining factor because the DA will almost never have this behavior. They're not typically interested in attention, and they don't typically need any external validation. They are very self-sufficient and independent, so that is not a need of theirs. That's kind of the reason that it's not common that narcissists will be dismissive avoidant in their attachment style. So this one right here, there's nothing to compare, there's nothing to conflate, because this trait will most likely be absent in a dismissive avoidant. They don't need to be admired. A narcissist almost needs to be admired constantly. They constantly are going to be bragging about their achievements. They need everybody to know about them. And they need everybody to know what they've done that's so great, because they want to constantly be told how great they are. Give me an E. Last but not least, the final E stands for envious. So narcissists are notoriously envious of everyone else because, why? Because they need all the attention. It's all about them. So anytime somebody else is getting the spotlight, they're going to envy that person. Or if somebody did something better than them, someone got the promotion before them, somebody got something that they want attention for, they're not going to like it. Even if they themselves already have something and another person gets that thing, they're going to be irritated. They don't want other people to have it. So that's where envy is different than jealousy. Jealousy is just desiring something that someone else is getting or someone else has, wishing that you also could have that. Also being the key word. Envy is like a deep-seated resentment that someone else has something that you don't, to the point that you would like to have it instead of them. You don't want them to have it. You want only you to have it. You want to take it from them. Or you believe that you should have it and they should never have gotten it. Again, same thing with this one. A DA is going to be most likely not exhibiting this trait whatsoever. So they're not going to necessarily be envious of other people because they're more just focused on achieving and getting to the top. The only way that I could see this getting conflated is a DA will maybe beat themselves up a little bit about not making it to the top of the achievement of whatever they're trying to achieve. And that could be conflated with envy, but they're not going to be talking about how that person doesn't deserve it and they do, unless maybe that is like the truth of the matter. It's more likely just going to be that they feel like they need to work harder and they will get more focused into achieving that goal. And they're always going to be moving the goalposts, so they're always going to get higher and higher in their achievements or what they expect out of themselves. They're always going to be really hard on themselves. But not to the point that they are tearing other people down. And it's not to the point where they don't think anybody else should have it. They just expect highly of themselves. So that'll be really easy to tell the difference there. What it comes down to is that sometimes dismissive avoidants could also be narcissists. Because like we know, narcissists don't need to display all 9 of the criteria to fall into the category of narcissistic personality disorder. They might have some of them. So maybe they would be absent of envy. Maybe they would be absent of need for admiration. That would be tough. But maybe they don't have that one as much, and then they would still, and maybe they don't have the grandiosity, but they could still be a covert narcissist, possibly. So it's not unheard of, but it is the least likely attachment style to include narcissism. So I hope you put your guesses in the comments for what is the most common attachment style to include narcissists. And the answer is... That's right, you guessed it. The fearful avoidant. The fearful avoidant is most likely to be a narcissist, most likely to have narcissistic personality disorder. And then the second most likely, who would have guessed? The anxious. Yes, anxious, preoccupied people can also be narcissists. It's possible, more possible and more likely than the dismissive avoidant, which is crazy because most people assume that the dismissive avoidant is more likely to be a narcissist. But I hope that this video has helped you to understand why that is not correct. And if you find yourself conflating the two, you'll want to very swiftly separate that out and get rid of that belief because it is not accurate. I love you. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.